So welcome, good morning, and I am excited to give you this presentation on what is the best diet for health and longevity. I have about 29 slides, and so we'll take our time going through this with plenty of time for question and answers as we go along or at the end. The topics that we will discuss today are the origins of our current dietary recommendations. What are some of the different diets that that are talked about in the media? What are the risks and benefits of these diets? Should foods be organic? What about dietary intolerances? How do we reconcile some of these recommendations with some things that don't agree with us? We won't be discussing weight loss diets. That's a whole different category. And so I just wanted to put that out there right away. This is more for healthy aging and life and reducing our mortality. So, what is a diet? An individual's diet is the sum of food and drink that one habitually consumes. So we are definitely what we eat, and that constitutes our diet. The list of common diets that are out there is categorized in these following terms, and there's many more. The Western diet is something that we're all familiar with, but it actually has a definition. There's something called the DASH diet, Mediterranean diet. The Harvard diet just came out last year. There's the keto Atkins diet, diabetic diets, cardiac diets, the mind diet. There's also ethnic diets like the Buddhist, Hindu, Jain. There's the religious diet, the wisdom diet by LDS, and I list this over like kosher and Islamic diet only because it has been linked to longevity, and the ancestry diet. There's others out there like Ornish, Pritikin, some older diets that we'll just touch on very, very briefly, but they're not, haven't been proven for their longevity benefits. So, before we go into the deeper dive of the diet, we got to look at kind of how did all of this start? People have been eating since the beginning of time. So, how did the formal process of this food guide and pyramid and what we should eat and what we shouldn't eat start? Well, the food pyramid or group started in Sweden in the 70s, and it was adapted by the US uh, DA, the Agricultural Department, in 1992. And if you remember, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, we had food groups. And this was in response to the Western diet and processed foods that had suddenly taken over our food supply, processed cereals, packaged chips, packaged everything. So folks started to notice a decline in health and well-being and said, hey, we need to emphasize some of these basic food groups to combat the packaged food industry. And then that led to the food pyramid, saying we need these certain food groups in these quantities. And then it led to my pyramid to try to decrease the carbs because that was the foundation back in the 80s, 90s, and then led to more equal parts of vegetables, fruit, healthy fats and oils, and meat and fish. And now now they've termed it My Plate, which has shown 50% of the diet should be fruits and vegetables, and then proteins, grains, and dairy. So creators of the food pyramids have been accused of oversimplification on what constitutes a healthy diet. Variations of these programs are used globally. So in China, they have a food pyramid, but it looks different in terms of the supplies of the pictures of the foods in there. India also has a My Plate. I'll show you some examples later on. Now let's talk about, where does this 2,000 calorie a day recommendation come from? Most of our packaged foods and anything that has a label on it has this nutrition fact label on it, where it shows a serving size, amount of calories, total fat, cholesterol, sodium, protein content, and if there's any vitamin value um, in there. And then it's a percentage of the 2,000 calorie a day diet. Well, interestingly, this 2,000 calorie norm was based upon surveys done by the US Department of Agriculture back in 1968. And all they did was surveyed men and women and said, how much do you usually eat in a day? And men averaged 2,000 to 3,000, and women averaged 1,600 to 2,200 calories a day. Now, if you look back at 1968, that was a much more active time. We did not have computers in front of us. We weren't as sedentary. And so this probably was the average, and people were able to stay lean and fit. And the food wasn't as processed. Yes, the 50s had modified into TV dinner and frozen foods, but it wasn't quite as processed as the foods that entered in the 70s and even 80s. So in 1990, Congress passed a Nutrition Labeling Education Act to give us more information about the nutrients of what we were eating. And maybe it would get people to think about what was in our food and how many calories we were inadvertently consuming. So that leads us to discuss this Western diet. And it is a diet that is considered modern, and it's characterized by high intakes of prepackaged foods, refined grains, red meat, processed meat, high sugar drinks, candy, sweets, fried foods, and conventionally raised animal products, high fat dairy, like processed ice creams um, and high fructose products. Dairy, cereals, refined sugars, refined vegetable oils, and alcohol actually make up 72% of our current total daily energy consumed by all people in the United States. 50 million people have high blood pressure, 37 million people have hyperlipidemia or high cholesterol, 11 million people in the US have diabetes, and these are current numbers. And 40% of us postmenopausal women have osteopenia. And if we have a fracture, our risk of death is 20%. So, and this is 2023 information. So the impact of our diet can affect our mortality risks. And the Western diet is now linked to all these risks. I'll show you more data. So if we look at evolutionary terms, as we've westernized, we've become more processed with our foods and automated. We've shown that processing of nature's gifts to us has eliminated a lot of the nutrients and actually causes more inflammation in our bodies, which then leads to chronic diseases such as obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. It reduces our immunity, alters our gene expression, and increases our risk for cancer. We've got a lot of scientific molecular data showing that a diet that has all of this in it leads to reactive oxidative species and inflammation. It also reduces whatever good things we can give ourselves, like vitamin C, E, flavonoids, and it makes it so that those aren't in our system to help us fight and repair the damage this has done. And that leads to disease progression. As you all are reading with those Zempic and Zepbound and Mounjaro and everything, we have an overweight problem in the United States, and 65% of us could stand to lose some weight. And they attribute 280,000 plus deaths every year just due to obesity. So that's excess deaths we don't need. even though I said this isn't about weight loss, it is about what we are eating and how we can impact our disease trajectory. So, diet and lifestyle are huge in what happens to us in our body. So, that Western diet plus other risk factors such as stress, central weight gain, a sedentary lifestyle of being in front of screens, smoking, alcohol, being a diabetic can alter our body's DNA, as well as increase clogged arteries, elevate our blood pressure. That leads to increased risk of coronary artery disease, peripheral artery disease, high blood pressure, and strokes. But interestingly, the diet that is highly ultra processed also impacts our mood, leads to anxiety, decreases our overall energy level, affects our sleep, alters our gut microbiome, and slows down our metabolism. So, folks can say, I eat very little, but it's the quality of what you've eaten and your activity that alters our metabolism. So let's start in some of the diets I'd listed and look into what that means. So the DASH diet is it was a diet created to help see if they can stop high blood pressure. So it's the diet, we love acronyms in medicine. So the DASH diet represents dietary approaches to stop hypertension. This DASH diet eating plan requires no special foods. Instead, it just says, here are some weekly nutritional goals, and it recommends eating vegetables and fruits and whole grains, including fat-free or low-fat dairy products, fish, poultry, beans, nuts, and vegetable oils. It limits foods that are high in saturated fats, such as fatty meats, full-fat dairy products, and tropical oils, such as coconut, palm, and palm kernel oils. Limits sugar-sweetened beverages and sweets. The diet that it recommends is a low sodium diet, and we typically consume about 3,500 milligrams a day of salt. A teaspoon contains 2,300 milligrams. The ideal amount to help lower blood pressure is 2,300 milligrams or less. 1,500 milligrams a day actually lowers blood pressure further. So eating a healthy diet with a low sodium helps lower blood pressure. And more information can be found on the National Heart, Lung, Blood Institute website here. The health effects of the DASH diet shows that if you were eating a high sodium diet, you could have high blood pressure, which leads to congestive heart failures, total body edema and lower extremity edema, stroke, and shortens your lifespan. Most sodium consumed in our foods comes from processed and restaurants. So if you go out to eat, you're guaranteed 2 teaspoons of salt in whatever you've been served total in that evening meal or lunch meal. Naturally occurring salt is 14% of our diet. If you add at the table, it's only about 5%. Home cooking, maybe 6%. So the predominant source of salt in our diet is exogenous. Top 10 sources are pizzas, breads, rolls, sandwiches, cold cuts, and cured meats, soups, Mexican food such as burritos and tacos, savory snacks like chips, popcorn, pretzels, snack mixes, crackers, cheeses, the rotisserie, the pre-made chicken, and eggs and omelets, depends on how they're cooked. For people aged 16 to 18, pizza, Mexican food, sandwiches, many of the same things that I've mentioned listed here. So if we look at lunch, vegetable soup plus half a sandwich, 1,450 milligrams of sodium right there. You got to stop eating anything after that, right? Even a chocolate chip cookies have 70 milligrams. So if this was a typical breakfast, lunch, dinner with just an egg and cheese sandwich, orange juice, banana, soup and sandwich, spaghetti without added salt, you've you've consumed 3,000 milligrams of sodium in a day. So um, salt is a sneaky substance that affects our overall health. And that's why many people are looking at salt restrictions, salt labeling, salt laws, salt taxes, because it affects us as a general population. So, can adding extra salt to food cut your life expectancy? So there was the UK Biobank study of over 500,000 people were followed for 9 years. And they noticed 18,000 premature deaths were documented. Added salt in the diet can shorten your lifespan by 1 to 2 years. Those with higher intake of fruits and vegetables, in addition to their added salt in their diet, mitigated that shortening of their lifespan. So if you add a little salt to your diet, but you're a vegetarian, you're not going to have as a risk of premature death as perhaps having a salt 3,000 milligram a day diet or added salt. Um, there's still, this is an ongoing study, and we look forward to more data. But we can already see that adding salt in your diet can shorten your lifespan. Let's look at the Mediterranean diet next. It's now the vogue diet of today, and it's a way of eating based on traditional cuisine bordering the Mediterranean Sea. There's no single definition for the diet, but it's most often high in vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans, nuts and seeds, olive oil, and using seasonings with herbs and spices. I can tell you from a recent trip to Italy, there were no salt and pepper shakers on any table. And I'm sure many of you have traveled and found that to be the case. The main steps to follow the diet includes eating vegetables and fruits, whole grains, and plant-based fats every day. Each week have fish, poultry, beans, legumes, or like lentils, and you can maybe have an egg. Enjoy moderate portions of dairy products, but not on a daily basis, like our healthy US plate had that glass of milk. No, that's not part of the Mediterranean diet. Limit red meat and limit foods with added sugar. So there's been evaluation of this diet in terms of primary prevention of cardiovascular disease. The interesting thing about this diet is that if you added supplemental olive oil or extra virgin olive oil or nuts, and that diet showed if in people at high risk for cardiovascular disease, the incidence of major cardiovascular events was lower among those that were assigned to a Mediterranean diet with added extra virgin olive oil or nuts. And this was a study of about 7,500 people in Spain. And here is a summary of the recommendations that were provided for this diet in terms of olive oil. Greater than 4 tablespoons per day was the goal. Tree nuts and peanuts greater than 3 servings a week. Fresh fruits greater than 3 servings a day. Vegetables greater than 2 servings a day. And then fish, legumes all per week. Discouraged soda drinks, commercial bakery goods, and red processed foods. The control diet, those that were in the comparison group, had greater than 3 servings a day of low-fat dairy products, greater than 3 servings a day of bread, potatoes, pasta, and then fresh fruits, vegetables. They discouraged vegetable oils and all the other things. So it was a fairly healthy diet if you looked at it in comparison. The primary endpoint was heart attack, stroke, and death. The control diet had a higher risk of that compared to either the Mediterranean diet with nuts or the Mediterranean diet with extra virgin olive oil. The control diet also had an all-cause increase in mortality, but so did the Mediterranean diet with nuts. However, the Mediterranean diet with extra virgin olive oil separated itself as a lower all-cause mortality. So interesting data, and the study was stopped early because of this separation. So after that, simultaneously, Harvard has been looking at what is a healthy diet, and they've modified that healthy eating plate that I showed you from the US guidelines, replacing that glass of milk with water. And they showed in a cohort study with about 36 years of follow-up. This is from the Nurses Health Study, that greater adherence to eating a healthy variety of foods, such as in this plate, was associated with lower all-cause mortality. And this was supported by dietary guidelines based on the healthy eating patterns. And it was just a slight modification of what the USDA has recommended. And they've added this portion to the dietary recommendations, which I think is really helping with all-cause mortality. So replacing this cup with water, healthy oils, and staying active is considered now the Harvard diet and their healthy eating plate. The study released last year published in JAMA showed a lower risk of all-cause mortality and the AHEI is the alternate healthy eating plan, or the Harvard diet. And if you look, all the diets that are variations of the Mediterranean diet reduce all-cause mortality, but this is just a little bit further to the left. Certain populations are better impacted than others. For this one, the healthy plant-based diet in Hispanic populations, that seemed to have a better signal. But these are all Mediterranean plant-based diets, and they all reduce all-cause mortality. So let's look at the keto diet. Should you try it? It's advertised as a weight loss wonder, but this eating plan is actually a medical diet that comes with serious risks. This is a high fat and protein diet in order to make the body burn alternate fuels instead of glucose. It leads to nutrient deficiencies because if you're not eating vegetables, fruits, and grains, you may be at risk for deficiencies in micronutrients, including selenium, magnesium, phosphorus, and the B and C vitamins. We've seen, I personally can attest to people with liver problems with so much fat to metabolize, the diet can't. It could make existing liver conditions worse. And renal disease, people who have high blood pressure or have renal kidney issues can't metabolize them, and the high protein overloads them. Constipation, the keto diet is low in fiber and leads to constipation. It also, remember, diet can affect our mood. Well, this definitely leads to some kind of fuzzy brain and mood swings because we need a little healthy sugar in our brain for our brain to function. And so it can make us more irritable. I do not advise the keto diet for anyone. Now, we've heard about the diabetic diet. I have many people who have pre-diabetes or diabetes, and folks are getting confused on what should that look like. What should their plate look like? Eating the right foods for diabetes means eating a variety of healthy foods from all the food groups. However, 50% is non-starchy vegetables. If you notice, fruit is not on this as compared to the healthy eating plate as the USDA had recommended, or even the Mediterranean diet. But fruits are moved over into the smaller section here. Water and 0-calorie drinks are there, and then protein foods. And notice this is a picture of fish, not cow. And non-fat or low dairy products are okay. This is considered a low carbohydrate diet. And there are, if you think about carbs, there are 3 specific sources or types: sugars, natural sugar in fruit, milk turns into glucose, or added sugars in soda and packaged foods, starches like wheat, oats, grains, starchy vegetables such as corn and potatoes, lentils, peas, those are all considered starches. So they're not, you don't want to include this and consider it a vegetable. There are parts of plant foods that aren't digested but help us stay healthy, and those are good to consume, but sugar and starches can raise your blood sugar, so fiber doesn't. So fiber foods are healthy, and that's what you should lean into. And for more information, diabetes.org has meal plans and how to eat right and how to set up a shopping list and how to grocery shop from start to finish. So there's more information than just on this one slide. What is a cardiac diet? Once you may be hospitalized and the doctor may place you on what's called a cardiac diet. Well, it's an unofficial term for a heart healthy diet. It's an eating plan that emphasizes foods that promote heart health, such as vegetables and fruit, whole grains, lean poultry, and oily fish like salmon and tuna that are high in omega-3s. It includes the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. So it's kind of a fusion of both with low sodium. However, it is more liberal than the diabetic diet, and you can eat more fruits. So that's a cardiac diet in a nutshell for you. There's something called the MIND diet that's just was published last year in the New England Journal that has gained a lot of press. Now, the MIND diet is the Mediterranean Dash Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. So that acronym is MIND. So really, for this conversation, it's a combination of the Mediterranean and DASH diet. And this diet was compared with mild caloric restriction. And in summary, there was no significant difference in cognitive score or decline at 3 years. Interestingly, there were a little bit more adverse events, which were cardiac and musculoskeletal in the caloric restriction group. Maybe there was a little improvement in cognitive score at 3 years compared with the control diet. Just because of this non-significant difference, folks are adopting the MIND diet and talking about it, and it is making some top 10 lists. Really, it's not a bad diet. It's the combination of Mediterranean and low salt. So it's a healthy way of eating, and maybe that's overall helping the mind. I wanted to just introduce you to some other diets that are out there globally. The Buddhist, Hindu, Jain diet, which I am familiar with, it's all vegetarian and plant-based. Because sometimes in our Western society, it's hard to imagine what plant-based diets look like, taste like. We're not exposed to it very much here, and you kind of have to work hard on a menu to find it. These diets have been in existence for thousands of years. This is the Indian diet, which I grew up with. The Hindu diet, it is an ancient diet that focuses on nonviolence, not harming life forms, mindful when you eat. You take each bite with gratitude and appreciation. And there's some aspects of this diet that won't eat anything that has been grown subterraneanly. The Jain won't eat garlic or onions. And some are such religious believers of not harming any life form, including plants, that they only will consume foods that have dropped off the plant, because they cutting the plant they believe can harm the plant. So these have been incorporated into the religion of Indian, of Buddhism, Hinduism, and Jainism. And so it's just visual for you to see that, and appreciate that that culturally has kind of come from there. And I don't know how much you know about Hinduism and Buddhism, but they do believe in reincarnation. And because of that, they don't want to harm life forms, because they think that that cow or fish is on its journey to a future life. So I use that as a segue into ancestry diet, since that is a buzzword right now. The ancestry diet is an evolutionary discordance theory, which suggests that the human body is adapted to certain dietary patterns of our ancestors, and it's programmed in our DNA, and that modern diets, which can differ significantly from what our ancestors consumed, may contribute to chronic diseases. That so by adopting some of the healthier eating habits that are in line with our evolutionary past, we can potentially reduce our risk of chronic diseases and improve overall health. Some tips to that are to eat local foods that are from your region. So we are a very mobile society, and America is the melting pot. So it would be very hard for us to kind of eat locally from our country of origin, but it's something to think about. Cook from scratch. Cook and consume all parts of an animal. So that's part of that ancestry, since back then they had to eat everything, including the bone marrow. And include fermented foods in your diet. So they had to ferment foods because refrigeration didn't exist. But the fermented foods in the diet has probiotics. This diet, the ancestral plate, is high in some of the foods that are not advised for the Mediterranean diet, lower in carbohydrates and higher in polyunsaturated fats. But if you see here, there's ghee, which is an Indian butter, a clarified butter, grass-fed beef lard, but there's also olive oil and cheeses there. So it's kind of a mixed diet, and I don't think it would reduce our mortality. But it's important. I think it's worthy to say, well, if something doesn't agree with you or you have no taste for it, maybe it is by ancestry. Let's look at the wisdom diet of the Latter-day Saints, because I just wanted to show you this because it is in one of the 5 blue zones of the world's happiest, healthiest, and longest living populations, and that's in Loma Linda, California. So the word of wisdom consists of 7 base dietary rules. This is in the Book of Mormon. Avoid alcoholic beverages, avoid the use of tobacco, avoid hot drinks, which was understood to mean tea and coffee. Eat all the herbs, understood to mean vegetables, in their season. Eat all fruits in their season. Eat meat sparingly. Eat grains, especially wheat. So Loma Linda Blue Zone, living to 100, attributes their longevity to the of the LDS population in that area. So it's in kind of Riverside County. So here you've got this zone of population surrounded by people consuming, 70% of them consuming the Western diet, but you've got this population living to 100. And they attribute that longevity to whole foods, not processed, plant-based, vegetarian diets, beans and whole grains, lots of water, and that they avoided alcohol, caffeine, caffeinated beverages, and tobacco. They avoided pork and red meats, and they are a very active population. So US News and World Reports just came out in the last month with the top 10 diet. The US News and World Reports is now becoming great at creating a top 10 for practically everything. And they had interviewed 43 nutritionists across the US and asked them what do they feel are the best diets out there. The Mediterranean ranked number one, DASH diet number two, the MIND diet, even with the data that I showed you that was very marginal at best, ranked number three. There's a 12-week Mayo Clinic diet that is very similar to the Mediterranean diet, ranked number four, but it's a 12-week program. There's something called the flexitarian diet, which is semi-vegetarian. You can have a fish or poultry once a week. Weight Watchers came in at number six, but I don't recommend it. It is a weight loss diet that I don't think will offer nutrition right now. There's something called the volumetrics diet, which is nutrient dense, low calorie foods, another weight loss one. Dr. Weil's anti-inflammatory diet ranked number 8. A vegan diet, believe it or not, ranked number 9. And it eliminates all animal products, including eggs and dairy. So it puts you at risk for B12 deficiency. I don't advise that. And the Ornish diet ranked number 10, which is a low-fat diet, but it permits processed foods. So you saw what I feel about that. If you want to read more about it, just Google health.usnews.com. So I don't think it's bad to choose something within the top 3 for your overall longevity. What about organic foods? Do they make a difference? Well, there was a study published about 10-15 years ago with the meta-analysis, and it said it could increase your life expectancy by 17 days for women and 25 days for men. The organic foods definitely decreases allergies and body weight in growing children. So those are in heavy children, not like a lean child. Organic foods are produced with the help. What are organic foods? So they are foods produced with the help of natural organic manure, not with pesticides. And it ensures soil conservation. So it doesn't kind of deplete the soil. So the soil is more nutrient dense. Even weeds are pulled out by hand, unlike conventional farming, wherein synthetic pesticides and chemicals are used. Even the animals, so if you have organic meats, are raised by being fed a well-balanced and organic diet. So you are what you eat and you are what the animals ate. And so they avoid antibiotics, growth hormones, and they permit organic meats are free range animals versus unorganic, where they're kept in just tiny cages or stalls to just limit their mobility and burning calories so they become bigger, and more meat is sold. Organic foods also are more nutrient dense than conventional produce. Since conventional produce uses fertilizers and chemicals, it reduces that natural balance in the soil and it leaches the soil. Organic products are yielded in lower numbers, so that's why they are priced at a little bit higher value. To carry the label organic by the USDA means that there's a series of quality checks and verification from inspection authorities. So there's a little bit more to that organic label, which ensures a little bit more quality. I invite you all to do your own taste test. Buy a bag or carrots that are loosely bunched, organic versus unorganic, and do your own taste test. And I think you will see the difference. And from there, you'll do the switch. Your tongue can, I did that about 20 years ago and felt a numbness and tingling to my tongue when I had the regular carrots versus the organic. And remember, pesticides are a neurotoxin. They like put little animals, give them a little buzz so that they fly away or die. So living to 100 on your terms. That is my goal for all of you. And so here are some simple tips that have been put together from this conversation, as well as there's plenty of information. The Washington Post just released this 7 easy food goals to improve your health. So come December, January, because it's a new year, there's a ton of information out there. Here it is in a nutshell. Remain active with your mind and body. Avoid processed and packaged foods. My goal for you, as I've said in the office, try to eat without labels. An apple, if it's in your hand, is an apple. It does not need a label. Limit fried, red meat and fried, red and cured meats. Eat vegetables more than fruits. Consume beans like a centenarian, and whole grains. And now I put in the caveat, if they agree with you. Many people find that over the years, because of their consumption of packaged foods, processed foods, they were raised a little differently, then suddenly have sprue or can't tolerate certain glutens. So that's going to take time for your stomach to adapt and change and modify. So be patient. These foods are rich in changing your microbiome and adding diversity. So don't just all of a sudden change your diet today. Introduce things slowly. Add more spices, nuts, plants, and fermented foods to your diet. Limit dairy to yogurt. An occasional egg is okay. Limit the toxins. From our prior discussions, you know what they are. Eat a smaller dinner. If you have to eat something, if you're going to be active all day, make it breakfast is a little larger, but eat a smaller dinner. Here's a trick. Eat bread last. So eat your vegetables first. And if you're going to have your whole grains or bread, eat that at the end. It will actually burn a little bit better. It will make your slow down your gastric emptying and make you feel full. And with your metabolism increased from vegetables, the glucose load from bread isn't going to shoot up as fast. So even if you're a diabetic, the sugar spike is lower if you eat your bread last. If you're going to eat bread, I recommend go for sourdough. I have to admit that now I'm baking a loaf of sourdough once a week for my husband. It is fermenting in the refrigerator. So it actually has microbiome in it and it's fermenting. Yes, probably some of it is dying in the oven. But you will then re-ferment some of that stuff in your stomach. And it digests better and it's a little bit better for you. So one thing I've noticed that the sourdough shelves, the bread area in the grocery store has been empty quite a bit. I have a feeling a lot of people are doing the same. But if you can bake it and you want to bake it, I'll share my starter with you. Listen to your body. If it doesn't agree with you, you don't have to eat it. There's plenty of other varieties out there. I actually wanted to encourage shopping in different stores too. Go to Northgate Market that's under the bridge, where some of the produce comes from Mexico, and you'll see fruits and vegetables we don't see at Vons or Boney's. Eat a variety. So that concludes our discussion. I will open it up to questions in a second. Somebody else mentioned that they make their own sourdough bread with no sodium and starter, and asked about it's healthy, and we just talked about that, so I'm glad I addressed it. Influenza A and COVID are widespread despite vaccination, so these are breaking through the vaccine. I'm seeing cases every day. Please call us early in the day so we can test you, get results faster, and we can send in medications before X-ray lab and pharmacies close. So if you wake up in the morning with a sore throat, runny nose, feeling bad, don't wait till 4 o'clock, especially if it's Friday, because we get into trouble over the weekend and can't get you the tests you need. And sometimes people have to go to the ER, and I hate doing that for something simple that we could head off at the pass. Also, from February 12th to the 19th, the office will be undergoing some maintenance and remodeling, which is a good thing for all of us. Where Lupita will be there trying to answer phones while workers are there. But office visits won't be scheduled, but we can do telemedicine and work around things for you. But I just wanted to let you know all of that. I appreciate your time and attention, and I'm going to stop sharing.